Welcome to episode 95 of A to Z Sports Talk. I'm your host, AJ, and thank you for spending your morning, afternoon, or evening with us today. Before we get started, make sure, as always, to like, subscribe, follow, rate wherever you're listening, whether it be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. It's been a couple weeks since we came out with an episode, and that was just because of scheduling and it being super busy, but I'm super happy to be back today as we have NBA to talk about, MLB to talk about, and NFL to talk about. There will be no NHL today and no college football. Like I said, NBA, MLB, and NFL. So, with the major news coming down today in the NBA, I feel like we must start there. Training camp began these last couple days. They're in day one and day two, roughly, of training camp, which means we are within a month of the NBA season beginning, which means we could see Victor Wembanyama, Scoot Henderson, and this amazing draft class, and major moves such as today, which Woj dropped a bomb to start today with Damian Lillard being traded to the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, immediately, my first thought is they're the best duo in the NBA. You can make a case for Jaylen Brown, you can make and Jason Tatum, you can make a case for Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. Obviously, they have Bradley Beal there as well. LeBron James is still LeBron James, but he's in year 21. Anthony Davis, that duo. Jokic and Jamal Murray. To me, immediately, that's the first thing that popped in my head. Damian Lillard, Giannis Antetokounmpo. They're already saying Freak Time is going to be their nickname, which I think is such a dope nickname in the NBA. But knowing that Damian Lillard went to the Bucks, that was the headline over all of social media. But the thing is, we have to look at everything that came with it, and that means a lot of players moved in this deal. Now, obviously, Damian Lillard to the Bucks is the headline, of course. But let's look at all the pieces that were moved in this deal. So obviously, Damian Lillard to the Milwaukee Bucks. It's a three-team trade. Drew Holiday, DeAndre Ayton, Tumani Kamara, and a 2029 unprotected Milwaukee first-round pick and unprotected Milwaukee swap rights in 2028 and 2030 to the Blazers. Everything I just named to the Portland Trailblazers. Now, the Blazers giving up Dame, you get Drew Holiday in return. You get a young center in DeAndre Ayton. Now, I mentioned a third team. This third team was the Phoenix Suns. The Phoenix Suns got Yusuf Nurkic from Portland, Grayson Allen from Milwaukee, Nasir Little, and Keon Johnson from Portland as well. So a lot of people are saying the Suns won this deal, and I could see why. They have the star power and they needed the depth. Now, this is where I'm worried about the Milwaukee Bucks. You have the star power of Damian Lillard, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and people sleep on Chris Middleton as a third option. You have your three stars there, and we've seen in the NBA a lot of times you can get away with two or three stars and win. Now, what we saw last year was kind of the opposite. Denver Nuggets got it done with a superstar, a borderline star in Jamal Murray who played out of his mind, and a tremendous role player, cast around them. And so that's where the Phoenix Suns, I think, really tried to get these role players, and they got Grayson Allen with championship pedigree, Nasir Little, a young explosive guy, Keon Johnson, potential as a first round pick a couple of years ago, and Yusuf Nurkic as an actual center, and DeAndre Ayton. We know there's been drama there in Phoenix. So looking at Portland getting DeAndre Ayton, I think that's a great young center to build around. Maybe not build around, but he's going to be part of that core future there. And Drew Holiday is one of the most underrated players in the league still. That dude can absolutely go get it, especially defensively, but he is a huge part of that championship team. Now, obviously, I'm not going to say he's the most important part of the Bucks championship run and them being so successful these last 4 or 5 years, because that's obviously Giannis. But I think Drew Holiday was more important than Chris Middleton. And I think the gap between Giannis and Drew Holiday on that team when it came to importance and leadership and just trusting a guy on that squad, I think Drew Holiday, the gap between him and Giannis was not as far as people think it is. Now, Giannis is obviously a much better player overall and can do more things on the court. And obviously, one of these guys, and Giannis is a top 5. You can make a case he's the best player in basketball, and Drew Holiday is more of a top 20, top 30 type of guy. But everything that Drew Holiday brought to that team was vital. Now, Damian Lillard is better Now, defensively, I'm a little worried, and depth wise, I'm a little worried because they gave up Grayson Allen, and that's a huge piece to that depth. Now, they have built their squad well enough where they should have enough to get by, and Damian Lillard is electric, and I just hope that core stays healthy for him because obviously he's been dealing with that these last couple of years. I think for the first time in a long time, you can make a case all three teams. I texted Zach this, by the way. You can make all three teams. You can make a case all three teams got better, and it's like immediately better. You can make a case all three teams immediately got better, and that's great to see for the NBA. I think this NBA season is going to be one of the best we've seen in a while. If everybody can just stay healthy and stay on the floor, I think it's going to be one of the best seasons we've seen in a while because there's no longer that Cleveland Cavaliers, Golden State Warriors, two teams, everybody else. Like you can make a case realistically for about 8 different teams to win the NBA Finals. And I think we started to see that last year. I mean, shoot, the last 5 years, it's been a different winner every year, which I think is so good for the league. And having a guy like Damian Lillard go to Milwaukee obviously puts them right up there once again. I don't think they were falling away from a like top level, top tier team. Adding him puts them, I mean, dang near right at the top. So I will have my predictions for the season coming out in a few weeks here, talking about the East and the West and MVP predictions and all the awards as well as champions. So I'm not gonna kind of spoil it and give you guys my picks right away, but I will say the Bucks definitely have to be up there on everybody's list. But as of right now, that's what kind of is going on in the NBA. There's not a whole lot left to talk about. Everybody's starting training camp, but we will have much more NBA news in the upcoming weeks. Let's kind of transition here into the MLB, where it's the complete opposite of the NBA. The NBA is starting their season. The MLB is winding down and ending their season. And as always, as these last few weeks, and we are currently in the last week of the season, as always, like every year, there's always storylines. There's awards that people are chasing after, whether it be an MVP race. You get storylines like last year with Yadier Molina and Albert Pujols retiring. This year, we got a combination of a little bit of both, and there's a lot of big storylines. Adam Wainwright has played his final game, getting his 200th win in that game. That was such an emotional game because Adam Wainwright has had a very miserable season, to say the least, as a St. Louis Cardinal. And he's been just struggling to obviously stay healthy and just he's 41 years old. There's not a whole lot left in that arm, and he has been really trying to compete. And a lot of people have been turning on him, which you hate to see from a guy who's absolutely a legend here in St. Louis. But that last game, it wasn't one of those games where he's been trying to get this 200th win. It was not one of those games where it was 9-8. He gave up 8 runs in 4 innings. It wasn't one of those. It was like a prime Adam Wainwright game where he just put on a show, 7 shutout innings. And I think if it wasn't a 1-0 game in that 7th inning, whenever they, he was finishing the 7th, I think he probably would have gone if we had a 6-run lead or something like that. I think he would have gone even further because he was about 90 pitches, even though he said he was tired, which you don't usually hear that from Adam Wainwright. He's one of the most competitive people that I've ever seen. So getting him to that 200th win is very special. Now he has a big sign off this weekend in the last homestand, even a concert that he's going to be putting on. So it's great to see Adam kind of get his good, shining, bright moment to end the season after a very hard season and overall a very hard season in St. Louis. And that brings me to my next topic, which is for the first time in over 30 years, the New York Yankees, the Red Sox, and the St. Louis Cardinals, all 3 teams are eliminated from playoff contention. This year, the playoffs will not include the Cardinals, Red Sox, and Yankees. These are 3, you can make a case, the 3 most historical franchises in baseball. And for them 3 not to make the playoffs just shows how weird this season has been. And I'm going to get more into that as these upcoming weeks go on. But this is one of the weirdest seasons that I've ever seen in baseball, whether, including the entire Mets, Padres, Cardinals hype coming into this from the offseason going into the season. All 3 teams extremely disappointing. And then you have teams that overachieved, like the Cubs, and the Diamondbacks have had high hopes for a while here, but talk about the Marlins and teams like that where you did not expect them to be in the thick of things at all. The Pirates started off the year great. Obviously, they fell off. But the Reds, teams like these that were in a rebuilding phase, rebuilded very quickly and have a lot of high hopes going into 2024. Even for a couple of these teams making the wild card, still have a chance this year. Other storylines from around the league: Terry Francona has managed his final game in Cleveland, a very emotional sign off for him as well. A great ovation to start the game and a tremendous ovation after they won. Terry Francona, stone cold as always, was quite emotional there, and that was a pretty touching scene to watch. Miguel Cabrera is playing his last few games here as an MLB baseball player, and he just hit homer 511. Another emotional scene was watching him come up to the plate to start their final homestand, and the crowd giving him a standing ovation. And I cannot imagine what that last at bat's going to be like for Miggy, who's obviously not been normal Miggy this year, but the dude's over 40 years old, and has been obviously one of the best players of all time, one of the best pure hitters of all time, and a first ballot Hall of Famer. So credit to Miggy, and definitely going to be keeping an eye on that final homestand in Detroit. Now away from all the emotional stuff, Ronald Acuna Jr. tonight actually became the first player to have a 40-70 season. In my opinion, I know how great Mookie Betts has been. I know how great Matt Olson has been. Freddie Freeman has also had a tremendous season. Ronald Acuna is the MVP in the National League for me, and I don't think it's very close. You can make a case for those guys like Mookie and Matt Olson and Freddie Freeman, but Ronald Acuna having 40 homers, 70 stolen bases, batting over 330, tremendous defense as always in right field. He came back from that scary injury a couple of years ago and has been absolutely amazing, and it's so good for the game of baseball. Now I hate that he's a Brave because that team is so loaded and so young and locked up all of their young players, so they're going to be very good for a very long time if they stay healthy. But all around for the game of baseball, it is so great to have Acuna back, and you could definitely make a case besides Shohei Ohtani when healthy. Acuna is the best player in baseball when he's right, and he's definitely right now. And that team in Atlanta is going to be something to deal with in the postseason. And now, speaking of the postseason, the majority of the division winners are locked. You talk about the Orioles 2.5 games up on the Tampa Bay Rays. That's still, a mathematical chance for the Rays, but I expect the Orioles to finish that off, which is so unbelievable, by the way, because the Rays have 97 wins. The Orioles have 99 wins. The Orioles are going to be a 100-win team and are still battling, trying to win that division, which just shows how great that American League East is. In the Central, American League Central, the Twins have that locked down. Everybody else in that division has been eliminated, so the Twins will be representing the American League Central in the postseason. The American League West is very interesting because we have about 5 games left in the season, and as of right now, the Rangers, who took a dip about 3 weeks ago, have gone tremendously, the other direction and have played tremendous baseball as of late. They are 2.5 games up on the Houston Astros, and the Seattle Mariners sit 3 games back in that division. So as of right now, it looks like the Rangers are going to be the American League West champions. In the National League, obviously the Braves have had that on lock for a very long time now. They have 102 wins at the moment. The Milwaukee Brewers have locked up the National League Central, and the Los Angeles Dodgers have wrapped up the National League West. But the biggest storyline I want to talk about here is not so much the divisions, it's the wild card race. Because the wild card race, as always, it seems every year this happens, is absolutely electric right now. So the Rays have locked a playoff berth. It'll be them or the Orioles as the top wild card team, which I expect to be the Rays because I expect the Orioles to win the division. Now you look at the other 2 teams, it's a battle of 3. It's a battle of 3 teams. Obviously, I said earlier, the Yankees and Red Sox have been eliminated. So it comes down to, as of right now, the Toronto Blue Jays, the Houston Astros, and the Seattle Mariners. And the Mariners have a huge series right now with the Houston Astros in Seattle. As it stands right now, Toronto would be right behind Tampa Bay, and Houston would be right behind them. They hold a half a game over Seattle, so that can change night by night. So that's something to definitely keep an eye on moving forward. And then in the National League, the Philadelphia Phillies locked in the National League wild card. The Arizona Diamondbacks look like they're about to get that too. They're 2 games up on the Miami Marlins and the Chicago Cubs, who are both tied for that 3rd wild card spot. And the Reds are a game and a half behind. So The Reds come to St. Louis this weekend. It's going to be a huge series. They still have a chance mathematically. Cubs and Marlins battling it out. Now, to finish baseball here, I want to talk about what chance realistically do any of these wild card teams have of making a deep run in this postseason? I said it earlier, it seems every year these wild card races come down to the end of the season, and every year it seems like one of these wild card teams make a deep run, whether it be the Tampa Bay Rays of years past, the Cardinals of years past, last year's Philadelphia Phillies. Can somebody that's in the wild card right now be last year's Philadelphia Phillies and make the World Series? I see a few teams that can realistically do this. I'd look at the Tampa Bay Rays with that pitching staff. No, Shane McClanahan really hurts that pitching staff, but Zach Eflin has taken on a huge role in that rotation. I look at them as a possibility. I look at Toronto. If everything clicks for them, I'm worried a little bit about their pitching, so I'm not as high on them. The Houston Astros have been there and done that. I could definitely see them making it far. And I've been really high on the Seattle Mariners since the All-Star break. I said they could definitely make a run at the World Series. If the Mariners get in, if they get enough hitting outside of Julio Rodriguez and Teoscar Hernandez, if guys like Ty France step up, J.P. Crawford's been phenomenal for them, Eugenio Suarez, those type of guys, if they can step up, this team can really surprise some people and go to the World Series, in my opinion, out of the American League. And the National League, I don't see as much potential here. The one team I would say that could be like last year's Philadelphia Phillies is this year's Philadelphia Phillies. I don't see a lot of potential with Arizona just because they're so streaky and they're so young. I think it's one of those learning curve type of seasons where they've really developed quickly, but I don't think they're ready to take that next step. And you look at the Marlins, who obviously their ace, Sandy Alcantara, just went down for the rest of the year with an elbow issue and potentially is going to miss some time next year. I don't see them kind of making up for Sandy and making a deep run. I did have high hopes for them with Sandy, but without him, it's going to be a game changer. And the Cubs, I don't see enough depth there, as well as they've played this year. I don't see them making a deep run either. So out of the National League teams in the wild card race, I would say the Phillies have a realistic shot of making a deep run again. And then in the American League, you can make a case for the four teams remaining, whether it be the Rays, Blue Jays, Astros, or Mariners. You can make a case for all four of making a deep run this postseason. But the postseason begins next week, guys, and that's going to be absolutely must watch TV as always. But let's wrap up today's episode with the NFL. And obviously last week, week 3 was historic, whether it be amazing comebacks. It seems like every game was just must watch TV. And then you had a team in the Miami Dolphins score 70 points and had a chance to score the most points of all time. I look at week 4 and I can honestly say I think it's going to be just as good. I think all these matchups are so hard to decide who's going to win. Now, I'm going to go over my game picks for week 4. We have not done it the last couple of weeks. I've been doing everything on TikTok, which has been blowing up, by the way. 11.6 thousand followers now on TikTok. So if you have not followed over there, make sure to go follow over there. We go live daily, Monday through Friday. But let's go over the week 4 schedule. We are 30-18 on the year. I am posting my picks and Zach's picks and our records every Thursday afternoon before the Thursday night game. So you can keep up with all of our picks and our record. But the Lions on Thursday night this week face the Green Bay Packers. And I do have the Detroit Lions winning on the road. I could see it going either way with Aaron Jones potentially returning and Christian Watson potentially returning. The Green Bay Packers have been a really pleasant surprise earlier or so far this year. A great comeback in week 3 versus the New Orleans Saints. I have Detroit winning on the road in this one. I think the way the Packers can beat the Detroit Lions is throwing the deep ball. Now, with that being said, last week the Lions defense looked great, and that was against a quarterback in Desmond Ridder, which I did not have belief in that offense being able to throw the deep ball because they run so much. Now, I think the Packers have the guys that could make that work, especially if Christian Watson is in that lineup. But I am going Lions on the road. They beat the Chiefs on the road in week 1, and I don't see why they can't win on the road here in a big-time divisional matchup. My must-watch game of the week is the next one here, Miami Dolphins and the Buffalo Bills. I think you can make a case for either team, and I sound crazy not picking the team that scored 70 points last week, and a team that I think, in my opinion, is the number one team to pick to go to the Super Bowl out of the AFC right now in Miami. But I am picking the Buffalo Bills to win this week, and I think it's a game where the Bills want to prove that they are the alpha dogs in that division still. You obviously have the Jets fall off after Aaron Rodgers' injury. You have the Patriots, who are not at the same level as the Dolphins and the Bills. When I look at the Bills, they had a really tough start to the season, losing to the Jets in that overtime crazy game week 1. They bounced back week 2, big win, 38-10 over the Raiders, and they looked phenomenal against the Commanders team last week, almost shutting them out 37-3, I believe the final score was. This is a big time kind of momentum turning game where both teams can kind of see where they're at. This Dolphins team is unbelievable offensively, have weapons all over the place. When Jalen Waddle goes down, I think it's pronounced a Chan now instead of a chain, but he had over 200 yards last week rushing. Raheem Mostert had 4 touchdowns, and Tyreek Hill was being Tyreek Hill, which he's making a case for the best receiver in the NFL once again. With all of that being said, that Buffalo Bills defense looked phenomenal these last 2 weeks. Now, it wasn't an offense like the Dolphins they're going to be facing this week, but I do think the Bills get it done this week. I think they want to prove that they're the alpha, and I don't even know if they are the alpha. But coming home and playing the Dolphins, who obviously looked great last week and have looked great so far this year, I think the Bills get it done at home. But with that being said, you could definitely make a case for the Dolphins. And like I said earlier, I feel crazy not picking a team that scored 70 points last week. From going to that high point of a game, let's go to a very low point of a game, and that is the Denver Broncos and the Chicago Bears. A lot of people picking the Bears in this one. I am going against that, and I am picking the Denver Broncos to win on the road. Now, the Broncos were that team that gave up 70 points last week. And my reasoning for picking the Broncos this week is because they have shown me much more in these first few weeks to have reason to pick them over a Bears team that has shown no promise in any game so far this year. Getting blown up by the Packers, getting blown up by the Chiefs. I have no faith in that Chicago Bears team, and I believe they are going to be hearing a lot of boos in Chicago this week. And I think it's going to be a low scoring game. I think Justin Fields may have himself a day, but I think that Denver Broncos offense is going to be able to light up that Bears defense. And the Broncos, a heartbreaking loss week 1, 17-16 versus the Raiders at home. They lose to the Commanders the next week, had that Hail Mary, but couldn't get the 2-point conversion. Just tough, close game losses that they could be 2-1 right now. Obviously, they looked awful last week versus the Dolphins, but I think they win this one on the road. The Steelers Texans is the next matchup here, and the Steelers are 2-1. The Texans with a huge win last week against the Jacksonville Jaguars, 37-17. They're my upset team this week. I am picking the Houston Texans to beat the Steelers at home. The Steelers are now 2-1 after starting off their season awful against the 49ers, and I think we know now that was just a testament to how good the 49ers are. Now, the Steelers didn't play great that game, but the 49ers are on a different level than pretty much everybody else besides potentially the Eagles, especially in the NFC. But with this Texans Steelers matchup, I really am going to pick the Houston Texans in this one. I think their defense showed enough last week. CJ Stroud has been phenomenal. Tank Dell is showing out. Nico Collins has been great. And I think Damian Pierce can have himself a good game against the Steelers run defense that hasn't been great so far this year. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the New Orleans Saints. No Derek Carr, but they get Alvin Kamara back in that lineup, and I am picking the Saints in this one. Tampa Bay did not look great against the Eagles this past Monday night. Again, it was the Eagles, but Tampa Bay is a team. I think they started off great this year, and I think they can be competitive, especially in this game. But I like the Saints in this one. I expect Michael Thomas and Olave and Kamara and Winston and like all these guys. They have a lot of weapons over there, and that defense can really play. So I like the Saints this week. This next matchup is the Bengals and the Tennessee Titans. The Bengals are a team I'm very worried about. But with that being said, the Titans are a team kind of like the Bears. I don't want to compare them to the Bears because they're much better, but they're a team where I don't have much faith in them whatsoever to win. They had a big win against the Chargers at home in week 2, 27-24 in overtime. But I like the Bengals on the road in this one as much as I do worry about that defense a little bit. and the Joe Burrow calf injury. That has not looked great so far, even though they grinded out a win on Monday night versus the Rams. The Patriots visit the Cowboys, and I do think the Cowboys, after a tough loss last week versus the Cardinals, bounce back this week versus the Patriots at home. The Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday Night Football play at New York to face the Jets, and I think the Chiefs will win this one as well. Not a whole lot to talk about with these past two matchups here. I think the Patriots defense could keep it close against the Cowboys, just as I think the Jets defense could keep it close against the Chiefs. But I think the Cowboys and Chiefs definitely have the upper hand this week. In London for the early game on Sunday morning, the Atlanta Falcons play the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I think the Jaguars do bounce back this week, even though their defense is a little banged up and they did not look good against CJ Stroud last week. I don't trust Desmond Ritter, but I do love that running game in Atlanta, and I do really like their defense so far this year. I believe the Jaguars will win this week in London. The Minnesota Vikings and the Carolina Panthers are both 0-3, and both teams need a win. Just like the Vikings played the Chargers last week, and both teams were 0-2 and needed a win. They could not pull it out, and the Vikings have had some heartbreaking losses so far this year, and they are not as bad as that 0-3 record looks. Now, the Carolina Panthers put up some points last week against my Seahawks. Andy Dalton looks solid. Bryce Young did practice today, so he's a potential to return. I do think the Vikings have enough talent offensively to get it done this week. And I do, with that being said, think Miles Sanders could have himself a day because that run defense for Minnesota has looked awful so far. I like Minnesota on the road in this one. Adam Thielen revenge game could be a real thing this Sunday, though, for Carolina. The Baltimore Ravens go to Cleveland to play the Browns, and I am picking the Browns to win at home in this one. The Cleveland Browns defense at home this year, guys, they've given up 6 points total in their two games. They gave up 3 points to the Bengals week one. And they gave up 3 points this past week at home versus the Titans. So they have looked phenomenal, and they almost grinded out a win on Monday Night Football a couple weeks or a week and a half ago against the Steelers. They could be 3-0 right now with Deshaun Watson not playing great football. Now, he did play better last week. And this is a Ravens team that I like a lot. And I think Lamar could have himself a day, but this Ravens team is beat up badly defensively. That's what hurt them against the Colts last week. And offensively, obviously no J.K. Dobbins, but Justice Hill is a little banged up right now. He's questionable. Gus Edwards is questionable as well. So I have no idea what they would do in the run game. And Odell Beckham's injured as well from their wideout position. So it could be a big Mark Andrews target day. It could be a Zay Flowers target day as well. But I do like the Browns at home in this one. One of my games that I'm really torn on this week is the LA Rams and the Indianapolis Colts. I am picking the Colts to win at home. I'm not very confident about that whatsoever. And as of right now, I might switch that before the timer clicks on Thursday night before that game starts between the Lions and the Packers. I might switch this. I'm not sure yet. As of right now, I am picking the Colts. I think they showed enough for me last week against the Ravens with a big win on the road. I think Anthony Richardson should be able to return this week, but even if he's not, Gardner Minshew is solid enough to keep them in ball games. I think either way, this is going to be a close game. The Rams coming off a loss versus the Bengals on Monday night. The Commanders go to Philadelphia to play the Eagles, and I think the Eagles get this done at home pretty easily. I think there's going to be over a 2-score differential in this football game. I like the Eagles at home. The Commanders, it might turn out to be kind of what it was last week versus the Bills and kind of just turn into a blowout. I don't think Sam Howell and that offense is prepared for some of these defenses, especially like the Bills showed out, turning Howell over 4 times with 4 interceptions. The Eagles are 3-0, and I've said this many times on our lives. I don't think they've reached even close to what their potential is. And that's scary for the league that they're 3-0 facing the Eagles or facing the Vikings rather, and facing some difficult teams so far. Tampa Bay on Monday night was a tricky matchup. So I really like this Eagles team. I really like them as my pick to win it all this year. Raiders Chargers, also a tough matchup. Chargers are banged up, man. Mike Williams is out for the year with that torn up knee. Austin Eckler is still banged up. And if I'm the Chargers, I'm sitting Austin Eckler this week because you have a bye in week 5. I like the Chargers this week. I think they have enough defense to get it done. And with that being said, I think Devontae Adams might have himself a ridiculous game once again, which I would love for one of my 3 fantasy teams. But No, I like the Chargers in this one at home. I think it could be very high scoring, and I'm really high on that Raiders team still, even though their defense needs to be playing better. The Arizona Cardinals, after a big win last week versus the Dallas Cowboys at home, kind of shocked everybody with that one. They face the San Francisco 49ers on the road. If they pull this one off, we are all going to be bought in with this Arizona Cardinals team. I do think the San Francisco 49ers win at home this week, and I think they win pretty easily. That Niners team and the Eagles, I think, are tier one above everybody else. And then after that, way down the list, you can find the Cowboys and Seahawks and teams like that. So Lions, Saints, stuff like that. So I think the Niners beat the Cardinals this week. The Niners have been very impressive on both sides of the ball. And then the wrap up this week on Monday Night Football, we have my Seattle Seahawks going on the road to play the New York Giants. They faced last year in Week 8. My Seahawks won. That was played at Lumen Field in Seattle. I like Seattle on the road this week. I think we're built to win this game on both sides of the ball. Giants have some banged up offensive linemen. Our D line has been good these last couple of weeks with Draymond Jones and Jaron Reed. You talk about the return of Jamal Adams to that defense. Now, he might not be as electric as he once was due to them just kind of easing him into things, but he's a huge addition to the Seattle Seahawks defense. And I think the Seahawks offensively, Geno Smith, his kind of revenge game here against the New York Giants, I think Seattle's in a very good spot to win this game on Monday night. And this is a Giants offense that potentially won't have Saquon Barkley for this game either. They have not looked very good at all. They had that comeback win versus Arizona, but they lost obviously week one bad to the Cowboys, and they lost to the Niners pretty handily. Like they kept it close, but we all knew they had that feel of the game. The vibe was just giving that the Niners were in control the entire time. So they beat the Arizona Cardinals with a huge comeback. They very easily could be 0-3, but the other two really elite teams that they played, they lost. So I expect them to lose this week, and my Seahawks to get the dub. But that wraps it up for episode 95 of A2Z Sports Talk. It's so good to be back after a couple weeks off and talk some sports with you guys. If you guys have any questions or want to talk to me, AJ, one-on-one, and make sure to go DM, follow us on Instagram, A2Z Sports Talk, and then DM us over there. We'd love to talk. Any game pick questions or anything, any replies or responses to this episode is much appreciated. But yeah, that wraps it up for episode 95. Of course, like, follow, and subscribe wherever you're listening at or viewing at. And make sure to go follow us on all of our platforms, A2Z Sports Talk on all platforms. Much love, everybody, and have a great, I guess, rest of your week and weekend. See you guys.